President Trump also slapped 50% tariffs on copper imports.
If you convert that copper into pipes or wires or tubes or anything, that's going to be taxed, or tariffs. But it's the actual refined copper, which is, from my bottom line, is what's traded on the futures contract, is what's really the shock. And that's what really matters. That's why we've seen the biggest plunge in copper ever. Still up in the air, but just shows how expensive it was for silly reasons. And now its implications, what it means for this long-term potential enduring peak in copper in the U.S.
What if I told you Canada just pulled the copper plug on the U.S., cut exports overnight, and left a $4.2 billion hole in America's supply chain? Trump went ballistic. This isn't a trade spat, it's an industrial earthquake. Factories are halting, copper prices are swinging wildly, and an entire ecosystem built on cross-border cooperation on the verge of collapse. And it all started with one move that almost nobody saw coming. Today, we're diving into a trade crisis that may have just rewritten the rules of international resource policy, and it started right at America's northern border. In late July 2025, the U.S. quietly hiked tariffs on copper products to a shocking 50%, part of a broader wave of protectionist policy spearheaded by former President Donald Trump as he positioned himself for a return to the White House. The response? Canada, the U.S.'s #1 source of imported copper, said, "You tax it, we'll stop selling it." Overnight, they halted all exports of semi-fabricated copper goods to the U.S. Copper wire, copper tubes, rods, all gone. In a flash, $4.2 billion of American copper imports vanished. And suddenly, the systems that power your house, your car, your phone, even your internet, were put at risk. But how did we get here? And why does this matter far beyond the price of copper? Because this isn't just a tariff war. It's a blueprint for how future resource battles might unfold. Let's rewind the clock. The fuse was lit in March 2025 when Trump began rolling out sweeping tariffs. But the explosion happened July 30th when 50% duties landed squarely on Canadian copper. Just 2 days later, August 1st, 2025, Canada flipped the switch. The epicenter of copper production in Canada is Quebec and British Columbia, and those regions essentially stopped shipping to major U.S. processors across Arizona, Michigan, and Texas. The result? A domino effect cascading across the North American industrial economy.
After announcing 25% tariffs on goods from India, the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on copper pipes, tubes, and electrical components. However, raw materials like copper ores and cathodes are excluded, a reversal from the earlier plans. The unexpected move had sent U.S. copper prices tumbling over 17%. Analysts say the move may benefit foreign miners like Chile and Peru, but offers little support to the U.S. copper producers.
Let's unpack this step by step. In early 2025, Trump's trade team began floating a new protectionist doctrine, American metal first. Think tariffs, subsidies, and a vision of bringing back industrial sovereignty. The first wave targeted aluminum and steel. But then came copper, the quiet workhorse of modern industry. Under a revised IEEPA mandate, the U.S. slapped a 50% tariff on all semi-fabricated copper products from Canada. Refined copper was spared, for now, but the intent was clear: make it cheaper to buy American, even if America couldn't meet the demand. Canada didn't wait to retaliate. Rather than engage in a tit-for-tat tariff war, Canadian producers made a sharper move. They rerouted supply chains. Instead of sending copper south to get hammered by U.S. customs, they diverted it east to China, India, and the EU. Countries hungry for raw materials, countries not taxing them out of existence. And just like that, America's copper lifeline snapped. This wasn't just a market shift. It was a deliberate, calculated geopolitical maneuver, a silent embargo. So, why did Canada do it? There are two answers, the economic and the symbolic. Economically, selling into the U.S. post-tariff meant taking a 35 to 50% hit on price. That's untenable. Canadian firms aren't charities, they had to survive. And with massive demand from Asia, the choice was simple: follow the money. This was about power, about dignity, about not being bullied on the global stage. Canada's government didn't make a flashy speech. They didn't hold a press conference, but the message was loud and clear. You want to wage a tariff war, fine, but don't expect us to be your resource farm while you hike our prices out of spite. It's a masterclass in diplomatic restraint and economic retaliation. And for Trump, it was personal. He fired back on social media, labeling Canada a disloyal neighbor and threatening further tariffs on Canadian autos, lumber, and pharmaceuticals. This isn't just about metal. This is about infrastructure, technology, and global positioning. Let's break down the impact. Copper futures on the CME collapsed by 20% almost overnight. The U.S. market panicked while London Metal Exchange prices held stable thanks to non-U.S. demand. Why? Because traders didn't hedge against this kind of move. They underestimated TACO, the infamous take a chance on copper outflow, and got scorched. U.S. manufacturers, from electric vehicle producers in Detroit to semiconductor fabs in Texas, suddenly faced raw material bottlenecks. Imagine this. You've got a $10 billion car factory and no copper wire to connect the batteries. Yeah, that bad. The Canada-US relationship has long been a model of economic integration, but this copper war could derail future USMCA negotiations. Talks are frozen, trust is fractured, and markets across Europe and Asia are watching, nervously. Let's zoom out for a second, because some of what happened is just wild. Traders have acronyms for everything, but nobody expected TACO to turn into a full-blown disaster. Hedge funds exposed to U.S. copper futures reportedly lost hundreds of millions in a matter of days. Oops, Canada didn't just stop shipping. They redirected billions in product to emerging markets, especially India, where copper demand has exploded thanks to EV growth. Some analysts say Canada may never return to U.S. copper dependency. That's a permanent market realignment. As of early August 2025, here's where things stand. U.S. tariffs are active. Canada has halted exports. Global copper markets are in flux. And while American officials hint at re-engagement talks, sources say no meetings are currently scheduled. So what's next? 3 potential paths. 1. Negotiated de-escalation. The U.S. could ease tariffs to restore flow, but Trump's posture makes that unlikely, at least until after the election cycle. 2. Domestic copper investment. The U.S. might try to ramp up its own mining, but that's a 5 to 10 year play, not a quick fix. 3. Copper recycling boom. Some companies are turning to urban mining, recycling copper from old electronics. But again, volume is limited, and supply chains aren't built overnight. Meanwhile, emerging players like Brazil, Chile, and even Kazakhstan are stepping into the vacuum. And quietly, the world is watching this as a case study in resource weaponization. So what just happened? A 50% U.S. tariff triggered Canada to slam the brakes on $4.2 billion in copper exports, unleashing a ripple effect through the U.S. economy, international markets, and the geopolitical landscape. This wasn't just a trade hiccup, it was a wake-up call. Copper isn't just a metal, it's the nervous system of modern civilization, and when you mess with the supply chain, the effects are immediate and dangerous. The question now is, will the U.S. back down to restore balance? Or are we looking at a new normal, where nations use resources as weapons? What do you think? Drop a comment. I'm genuinely curious. Was Canada right to retaliate? Is Trump's strategy bold or reckless? And if this video gave you a new perspective on how trade wars actually unfold, smash that subscribe button, because behind every chart, every tariff, every angry press release, there's a bigger story. And we're just getting started.